The world watched as Prince Harry and Meghan Markle stood before millions of people and promised each other a lifetime together. It was presented as a modern fairy tale, a royal prince falling in love with an American actress, breaking traditions, and bringing a new energy into one of the oldest institutions on earth. On that unforgettable day at St. George's Chapel, everything appeared perfect. The crowds cheered, cameras captured every smile, and millions around the globe celebrated what seemed like the beginning of a new royal era. But years later, questions about what happened behind the scenes have continued to fuel debate. According to claims made by royal author Tom Bower and other commentators, the picture shown to the public may not have revealed the full story. Behind the carefully planned ceremony, the designer clothes, and the worldwide celebrations, there were reportedly private disagreements, concerns, and tensions that some believe started long before Harry and Meghan exchanged their vows. Were there warning signs before the wedding day? Did some members of the royal family have doubts about the future? Or has the story been changed and exaggerated over time? These are the questions that continue to surround one of the most talked about royal weddings in modern history. When Harry and Meghan's engagement was announced, the reaction was enormous. The public was fascinated by their story. Meghan was different from previous royal brides. She was American, divorced, and had built a career in Hollywood before entering the royal spotlight. For many supporters, she represented change. She represented a monarchy becoming more modern, more diverse, and more connected to the outside world. The wedding became a symbol of hope. But according to Tom Bower's account, not everyone inside royal circles viewed the situation in the same way. Behind closed doors, some people allegedly worried about how Meghan would adapt to an institution built on tradition, discipline, and years of preparation. The concern was not necessarily about Meghan as a person, but about whether two very different worlds could successfully come together. The royal family operates under strict expectations. Every appearance, every statement, and every public decision is carefully considered. Members of the institution often spend years learning how to balance personal feelings with public duty. Meghan, however, arrived with her own ideas about independence, image, and influence. This difference in approach would later become one of the biggest talking points surrounding the Sussex story. According to claims made by Bower, some palace figures believed Meghan struggled with the limitations placed upon royal life. They allegedly felt that she wanted more freedom to shape her own role rather than simply follow existing traditions. Supporters of Meghan have strongly disagreed with these claims, arguing that she entered a difficult environment where she faced intense media attention and unfair expectations. But regardless of which side people believe, one thing is clear. The relationship between Meghan, Harry, and the royal institution became one of the most closely watched stories in the world. To understand the controversy surrounding the wedding, many observers look back to the beginning of Harry and Meghan's relationship. The official story was simple. Two people were introduced through a mutual friend. They met in London. They connected quickly. And what followed was a romance that moved faster than almost anyone expected. Harry later described feeling that Meghan was the person he had been searching for. Their relationship developed rapidly, and within a relatively short time, marriage was being discussed. To millions watching from outside, it looked like a powerful love story. But critics began asking questions about how quickly everything happened. Royal relationships traditionally move carefully. Future spouses are usually observed over time, especially when one person is entering the monarchy. The process involves understanding royal responsibilities, family expectations, and public duties. Harry and Meghan's relationship moved at a much faster pace. According to Bower's writings, some questioned whether Meghan fully understood the realities of royal life before making such a major commitment. The speed of their romance became one of the most debated aspects of their story. Supporters saw it as proof of a genuine connection, two people who knew immediately that they belonged together. Critics viewed the speed as a possible warning sign. But the wedding itself appeared to silence all doubts. On May 19, 2018, the world watched as Meghan walked down the aisle at St. George's Chapel. The ceremony included royal traditions, famous guests, and emotional moments that dominated headlines around the world. Prince Harry looked deeply moved. Meghan appeared confident and composed. The couple seemed ready to begin a new chapter. Yet behind the celebration, questions remained about how this new royal partnership would function. One of the biggest challenges was the difference between celebrity culture and royal culture. In Hollywood, personal branding and public image are often powerful tools. Success can depend on controlling your story, building connections, and maintaining visibility. The monarchy operates differently. Traditionally, senior royals allow the institution to come before personal ambition. Their public identity is connected to service rather than individual promotion. According to critics of Meghan, this difference created tension. They argued that Meghan approached royal life with a more modern celebrity mindset, while the palace expected a quieter, more traditional approach. Again, these interpretations remain heavily debated. Meghan's supporters argue that she was simply trying to bring fresh ideas into an outdated system. They believe she wanted to use her position to create meaningful change. Her critics claim that she underestimated how deeply rooted royal traditions were and how much sacrifice was required. The wedding became the moment where these two worlds officially collided. The ceremony represented unity and celebration, but it also marked the beginning of a complicated journey. Another major point discussed by Tom Bower was Meghan's growing influence over Harry. According to his interpretation, Harry changed significantly after meeting Meghan. Some observers noticed that he became more outspoken about personal issues, the media, and his relationship with the royal family. Those close to Harry have said these changes came from his desire to protect his wife and create a different future for his family. Others believe Meghan played a major role in shifting Harry's perspective. The truth, as always, is more complicated than a simple explanation. Relationships change people. Marriage changes priorities. And leaving a life of royal duty is a decision influenced by many factors. But what made Harry and Meghan's situation unique was that their personal decisions affected a global institution. Every disagreement became public. Every interview became a worldwide event. Every statement created headlines. And as time passed, the fairy tale image from the wedding began to be replaced by a much more complicated story. According to Bower and other royal commentators, the seeds of future conflict may have already been present before the wedding day itself. They argue that the tensions that later exploded were not sudden. Instead, they were the result of differences that existed from the very beginning. The expectations surrounding Meghan were enormous. Some saw her as the woman who could modernize the monarchy. Others feared she could challenge the traditions that had protected the institution for generations. And as the wedding celebrations ended and the couple began their royal duties, the world would soon discover that the biggest challenges were still ahead. Because behind the smiles, the photographs, and the carefully planned appearances was a question that would follow Harry and Meghan for years. Were they simply a couple struggling to find their place inside an ancient institution? Or was the royal wedding the beginning of a much larger conflict that would eventually change the future of the monarchy forever? The answers would slowly emerge, through interviews, books, documentaries, and public statements that would transform the way people viewed the Duke and Duchess of Sussex. As the years passed after the royal wedding, the story of Prince Harry and Meghan Markle became far more complicated than the celebration the world witnessed in 2018. The couple who had once represented hope, change, and a new direction for the monarchy soon found themselves at the center of one of the biggest royal controversies in modern history. According to claims discussed by Tom Bower and other royal commentators, some of the tensions that later became public may have been connected to disagreements that existed from the earliest days of their royal journey. One of the biggest areas of debate was the question of expectations. What did Meghan expect from royal life? And what did the institution expect from Meghan? These two visions appeared to be very different. The royal family has survived for centuries because of tradition, patience, and a strict understanding of duty. Those who marry into the institution are expected to learn its customs, accept limitations, and understand that personal desires often come second to public responsibility. But Meghan came from a completely different background. Before meeting Harry, she had built a career in entertainment. She understood media, publicity, and personal branding. She had experience creating her own public image and speaking openly about causes that mattered to her. According to critics, this created a natural clash. They believed Meghan wanted more control over her role and public identity than the traditional system allowed. Supporters of Meghan, however, argued that she brought valuable ideas and represented a modern generation that wanted the monarchy to evolve. The disagreement became even more intense as reports emerged about tensions within the royal household. One of the most discussed relationships was between Meghan and Catherine, Princess of Wales. For years, stories circulated about disagreements between the two women. Some reports suggested there were difficulties during the wedding preparations, while others claimed misunderstandings developed over different approaches to royal responsibilities. However, the exact details remain disputed. Different sources have presented different versions of events, and both sides have supporters who believe their preferred interpretation. What cannot be denied is that the relationship between the two couples became increasingly distant. Prince William and Prince Harry, once known as close brothers who supported each other after the loss of their mother, Princess Diana, appeared to move in different directions. This change shocked many royal watchers. For decades, the image of William and Harry standing together had represented family unity. They had shared childhood experiences, military service, and public appearances. But after Harry's marriage, reports of disagreements began appearing more frequently. According to Bowers' account, William was concerned about the speed of Harry's relationship and wanted his brother to take more time before making such a significant decision. Those claims have been debated, with some believing William was trying to protect Harry, while others argue that Harry felt he was not being supported. The wedding itself also became a major subject of discussion. Every detail was analyzed, from the guest list to the ceremony arrangements, from the speeches to the traditions included. To the public, it was a beautiful royal occasion. But behind the scenes, according to some reports, there were disagreements over how the event should be handled. The difference between royal tradition and personal preference became increasingly visible. After becoming the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, Harry and Meghan began their official royal duties. Initially, they received enormous public support. Many people admired their charitable work, their willingness to discuss mental health issues, and their desire to connect with younger generations. But the relationship with the media became increasingly difficult. Harry, who had spent much of his life under intense press attention, became increasingly vocal about the impact of newspapers and photographers on his personal life. Meghan also spoke about feeling overwhelmed by the pressure of royal expectations and constant public scrutiny. Their critics argued that public life came with the role they had chosen. Their supporters argued that the level of attention and criticism they faced was unfair and damaging. The disagreement eventually reached a turning point when Harry and Meghan announced they would step back as senior working royals. The decision shocked the world. It became known as Megxit, a term that sparked debate and controversy. The couple later moved away from the United Kingdom and began building an independent life. This marked one of the biggest breaks between a royal couple and the institution in modern times. But according to critics who followed Bowers' work, the decision was not a sudden moment. They believed the desire for independence had existed much earlier and that the wedding itself may have represented the beginning of a journey toward a completely different future. The couple's later interviews intensified the debate. Harry and Meghan spoke publicly about their experiences inside the royal family, including claims about feeling unsupported and struggling with palace life. Their comments created a worldwide reaction. Some people sympathized with them and believed they were revealing important truths. Others felt they were damaging the reputation of the monarchy and breaking the traditional rule of remaining private. The divide became deeper than a simple disagreement about one couple. It became a debate about tradition versus change, duty versus personal freedom, and whether modern members of the royal family should follow old rules or create their own path. This is why the wedding remains such a fascinating moment. At the time, it appeared to represent a new beginning. A prince marrying a woman from outside the traditional royal world seemed like a sign that the monarchy was entering a new era. But looking back, many observers now see it as the starting point of a much bigger transformation. According to Tom Bowers' critics, his interpretations are controversial and should be viewed as one perspective among many. Supporters, however, argue that his work raised questions that deserved attention. The reality is that only the people directly involved know every detail of what happened behind palace doors. The public has seen only parts of the story through interviews, books, and reports. But those pieces have created one of the most debated royal narratives of the 21st century. The wedding of Harry and Meghan will always be remembered as a historic moment. It brought together Hollywood, British royalty, and a global audience unlike almost any royal event before it. But it also became the beginning of a story filled with disagreements, difficult choices, and questions that continue today. Was it simply a love story between two people trying to build a different life? Was it a collision between a modern couple and an ancient institution? Or was there more happening behind the scenes than the public ever understood? Those questions continue to divide royal followers around the world. And perhaps that is why the wedding remains so fascinating years later. Because beyond the ceremony, beyond the headlines, and beyond the photographs, there was a much deeper story unfolding. A story about power, expectations, family, tradition, and the challenges of living under the greatest spotlight on earth. The royal wedding looked like the perfect beginning. But history would show that it was only the first chapter of a much larger and more complicated royal drama.